All right, so today we're going to do the same kind of ranking, but with these NFL quarterbacks, and it's the most important position in all of professional sports. So it's not an overstatement. It's not hyperbole to say that a team goes as their quarterback goes. And what we're going to notice is that most of the division winners, most of the playoff teams, and pretty much every single Super Bowl contender has a B plus minimum A level quarterback. So let's see where these QBs fall. Drake May, I'm going to be cautious. I really like his arm talent, his mobility, his body. He's a great quarterback prospect. I thought he should have gone second overall behind Caleb, but he fell to the Patriots. And obviously, we haven't seen him play in any regular season action against a team full of first stringers, but I like what I've seen in the preseason so far. He moves around well, he's got a cannon, and as the Patriots put more talent around him, he's only going to get better. Joe is obviously an A tier quarterback. Super Bowl appearance, two conference title game appearances. Only one of the few guys to beat Mahomes in the postseason on the road at Arrowhead. He's obviously not Mahomes, but Joe is really cerebral. He's really composed. Um, his teammates love him. He has a lot of arm talent. He doesn't have the biggest arm, but he knows how to layer in throws behind, in front of the secondary, behind the linebackers. He can read the field. My concern with him is health, but when he's on the field and he's healthy, he's dynamite, and the Bengals win a lot of games. So he's an A tier quarterback for sure. Justin Fields is C. A lot of high expectations coming out of Ohio State for him, but he hasn't put it all together. He's got a big arm, but he doesn't read the field well enough, and he doesn't, for a guy who moves as well as he doesn't avoid enough sacks, and all of that blame cannot fall on the offensive line. He has to help himself out as well, and I don't think he does a good enough job of that. Russell Wilson will be starting in Pittsburgh. Justin Fields will be close on his heels, but I don't anticipate him or Russ being the future quarterback for that franchise. So I'm going to put Fields at C. I have to do the same to Bryce Young because his rookie year was absolutely terrible. I don't blame him too much for that because I know the Panthers are extremely depleted. Like they have very a very limited amount of pieces around him. Contributors, they got a little bit better this offseason. Obviously, Adam Thielen is back and Deontay Johnson and stuff like that, trying to get him more targets. But I love this kid coming out of Southern California, modern day high school. I love this kid coming out of Alabama. He's a big game player. When he has pieces around him, he can make magic on the field. But I don't think we're going to see that this year, and we certainly did not see that last year in Carolina. They really need to find a way to build a better team around him. The concerns about his height are real, but I think he's talented enough and a good enough quarterback to overcome those deficiencies with his height and his size and his weight. But he's got to have a fair shot, and I don't think he's had that yet. Mahomes is closer to Tom Brady, closer to Michael Jordan than anybody in the league is to him. He's the best quarterback by a country mile. He's got the biggest arm, and you can't really quantify what he does. You can't just say it's this quality, it's the arm, it's the feet, it's everything with him. He's coachable. He's got the arm talent. He makes his teammates better. He does a lot with a little. He does a lot with a lot. So you give him an amazing team with Tyreek Hill in his prime and Travis Kelce and Sammy Watkins and all these pieces, a high-flying offense, he'll win you a Super Bowl. You'll give him a team with not so much on offense, but a great defense that's going to hold teams to under 20, 23 points. He's going to win you a Super Bowl. He's going for his third straight Super Bowl and fourth in total this season. I think if he wins 3 straight, he's absolutely has a GOAT argument at that point because nobody's ever won 3 straight. Nobody's even won 3 as fast as he has, being the catalyst of that team. Brady won 3 pretty early on, but he was never the catalyst of that team like Mahomes is. Um, he absolutely benefits from having an all-time great coach, an all-time great tight end, but he's elevated those pieces. Kansas City wasn't what it was with Alex Smith. They became perennial Super Bowl contenders and a dynasty with Mahomes, and that's because of 1-5. So I think I'm going to have him on a tier on his own, up here in the S tier, and rightfully so. I like Tyrod Taylor. Really, he makes me feel confident as a Jets fan, having him as a backup quarterback. He's obviously on the Giants last year. He can sling the ball a little bit. He's seen it all. He's not going to get scared if he's thrown into a big game situation. And yeah, you can't put all your eggs in one basket with a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers about to be 41. Um, Being 40 is no joke for anyone, especially if you're trying to play the quarterback position in the NFL at a high level. So I'm glad the Jets have him as an insurance policy. Lamar is an A tier quarterback. He wins about 75% of his regular season games. You can't ask for anything more than that out of a quarterback in the regular season. He obviously takes a huge step back in the postseason, and that's not entirely his fault, but this past year as a 1 seed, having the conference title game at home, the best defense, one of the best defenses in the sport, a running game, receivers, O-line. There's no excuse for the way he played. He threw a ball late into triple coverage. I still think he's a little bit limited with the arm. He's never been a gifted passer, and he never will be, it looks like, because at this point you are what you are, but he's improved in that area, but I don't think he can make that big throw. I think I've said that before, but that big throw, the 3rd and 11, 3rd and 12, the defense is blitzing, 2 big defensive tackles in your face, back foot. I don't think he can make that throw. He doesn't have it in him. And to get to the next level, to get to where Mahomes is, even to where Burrow went to appear in a Super Bowl, you have to make that. And I don't think he has it in him. Jordan Love is a B tier quarterback as of now. He absolutely has upward mobility in his future. If he continues playing the way he did late last year, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the sport. Really, he figured some things out. Matt LaFleur and his offensive coordinator kind of figured things out. What is Jordan comfortable with? What are his strengths? What are his weaknesses? What plays can we go to in big moments? The Packers fans should be very hopeful, not only because of Jordan Love, but because of wide receivers, young talent they've accumulated on offense. It's definitely a new era. This isn't A-Rod and Devontae like we've seen in the past, but they're always stable. They always have a good offensive line. They're always serviceable on defense. They're never putrid on that end of the ball. And LaFleur is a cerebral, young, offensive-driven head coach, and that's definitely going to serve Jordan Love well. Jordan can certainly finish the season at the A tier, depending on how he plays, and the sample size is small, so that's why I'm going to keep him here for now. The sample size is certainly not small for Kirk Cousins. He's been at it for a very long time, and he's been a stable, above-average quarterback for a very long time. He's a good distributor of the ball. He won't really lose you too many games with his arm. He won't win you too many games with his legs either, but I think that's what Atlanta is looking for. That's why they paid him that huge sum of money again. Stability, maturity, an adult in the quarterback room, something they didn't really have with Desmond Ridder, who was limited. And Kirk is a good quarterback. They should win that division, and yeah, I think he's right where he belongs. Goff is interesting because you'll look at him and he doesn't have like the name brand, the exposure, or the appeal to his game like a Joe Burrow does or a Lamar Jackson does, but he's as productive as anyone, I think, especially when the conditions are favorable for him. A great offensive line in Detroit, playing in the dome, nice weather, good conditions, run game, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown across the middle. When those conditions are favorable, he takes a huge leap, and he's one of the better quarterbacks in the sport, but I feel comfortable having him here. He was a few plays away from appearing in another Super Bowl last year, like he did with the Rams, so the Lions are going nowhere, and Jared Goff is a big part of that, so I'm going to give him his credit. Derek Carr's regressed terribly, and I think his struggles are going to be a big reason why New Orleans won't get anywhere close to the postseason. He was very good, very serviceable, and for the Raiders for many years, but yeah, time hasn't treated him well. He's taken a few steps back, and he's never had the biggest arm, and the thing that's characterized him is his his ability, to like compete, and I hope that's still a part of his game, but other than that, I think he's very limited at this point. Trevor's still a B for me. I know last season got ugly really quickly, but before that, he was leading the largest comeback in postseason history against the Chargers in 2 years ago, 2 seasons ago, and then he lost to the eventual champion Mahomes in the divisional round, and then last year they started the season 8-3, I believe, and competing for the 1 seed in the AFC before he sprained his ankle really badly. He's got a cannon for an arm. He was a generational quarterback prospect for a reason, and I'm always going to reward that because you don't cheat your way into those rankings. Everyone who saw him play at the high school level and at Clemson, they looked at him and they saw the body, they saw the arm, they saw the legs, they saw the mobility, they saw the leadership, and he checked every single box, and I think he still does. He's as talented as anyone in this sport. So I think if he does not improve, he's a B-level quarterback. And the contract that Jacksonville gave him, that shows the trust they have in him. But I think if things break well, he stays healthy, his supporting cast takes the next step forward, he can easily be an A-tier quarterback as well. So I'm really looking forward to watching him play this year. Daniel Jones, I'm between D and C, and I think I'm going to put him in D. He was never gifted. He's got great size, and he moves well. He's a good scrambler, but out of Duke, I think everyone thought he was a reach at number 6 overall when he got drafted, but I think the biggest mistake the Giants can make is doubling down on their mistake, and obviously they already extended him and paid him big money, but doubling down on that again and extending him even more, even though he's nowhere near good enough to compete in that division and that conference, that would be a huge mistake, and I hope they don't do that. I hope they start fresh at some point. Kyler's interesting. Haven't seen too much of him as of late, but what I did see, he was brilliant, but for the time being, I'm going to keep him here. Obviously, he's very short, but he's gifted as a runner. I think he's obviously in that Lamar Jackson category. He's quicker than Lamar, I think, but I think Lamar's a little bit more shifty. Lamar's obviously taller, but Kyler, his mobility is exceptional, and he can sling the football. He's a great athlete, obviously played baseball, chose the NFL over the MLB, but I'm going to give Kyler credit, and I'm going to say that he can definitely move up on this list depending on how he plays. He's still young enough to make those strides. And as recently as 2-3 years ago, I believe the Cardinals were in the playoffs, so that's not too far-fetched. I'm a fan of Kyler. Aaron is interesting, but I feel most comfortable putting him here in B and no higher because popping an Achilles at 39 is as ugly as it gets. And people don't recover from that in their 20s. But Aaron is special. He's always been special, so I'm not going to put it past him that he's going to come back and be a really good quarterback. I don't think the Jets need him to be special like he has been throughout his entire career. They need him to be stable, serviceable, don't throw the football away, and that's obviously his MO. He doesn't throw picks like ever. The best touchdown to interception ratio in the history of the sport. Just be better than Zach Wilson. Just be better than whoever last year's backup quarterback was for the Jets behind Zach Wilson, because that experiment was a failure. They've brought in like Mike White and all these D-level quarterbacks, if that, and they just need Aaron to be better than that. And I think they're going to win a lot of games. Aiden O'Connell's fine, but he's nowhere near good enough to compete in the AFC West. And I think Antonio Pierce knows that. The Raiders obviously know that. They try to some different options, but it's embarrassing that they're going to have to trot this guy out. He's fine. He can move the ball a little bit, but it's just not good enough. Baker, I'm not going to be too generous with, actually, and I'm not going to put him at B. I'm going to put him at C because he's short. His career went sideways in Cleveland. He doesn't have the attitude of a franchise quarterback, which affects him and affects his team, obviously. I don't expect Tampa to win the division this year. He obviously has a good enough arm, but I've never been a fan of him, even in Oklahoma. He always struck me as annoying and trying to compensate for something that he doesn't have. Everyone knows he's 5'10", and he's really heavy, so he doesn't even move around well. He's never evaded the pass rush well. So I think as Tampa Bay's offensive line regresses, so will Baker. And I think this is the year that starts to happen. Russell Wilson's obviously washed. Now with Pittsburgh Steel. Oh, this is Zach Wilson. I apologize. Well, Zach is still going in that tier, as is Russell. Maybe it's the namesake, but they're both terrible quarterbacks at this point in their career. Russ obviously has more of an excuse because he's older in the latter half of his career, but Zach was just atrocious every time he took the field for the Jets. I can count the number of good throws he's made on one hand, and I may still have some fingers left over. Anthony Richardson showed flashes, but this preseason hasn't been kind to him. After 2 or 3 weeks of regular season football, if he's playing well, I'd be more than happy to move him up to B, but at this point, I think this is where he belongs in the C. He's got all the physical tools, but he's raw, so I need to see more on the field of what he can do. Stafford's interesting. I still like him at this point in his career. He could always sling it with the best of them. Arm is never the issue with him. But now that he has a really good team around him, Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams and Cooper Kupp and Blake Corum and stuff like that, I think there's some real pressure on him to deliver this year. Last year, the 10 wins was kind of overachieving, but this year I think the team, the coaches, the front office, the fans expect 11 wins and give the 49ers hell in that division. I hope he does that. Herbo's a B quarterback. He hasn't won enough to warrant being an A. This isn't just a talent competition. This is about everything put together. This is intangible. It's a rich tapestry of what you do, what you have done, what I see with my eyes, what I don't see. So Herbo is great as a thrower. He has a great body. He has everything you look for physically in a quarterback, but maybe it's coaching, maybe it's the situation around him, but he's left a lot to be desired in recent seasons. The best season of his career has been his rookie year, and now that we're going into year 4, year 5, I believe that we should have seen some improvement in some other area. He came in out of Oregon as an A- quarterback, and I think today, in August of 2024, he's still an A- quarterback, which is not ideal. You expect some improvement over those first few years. Maybe this is the year under Harbaugh he takes that next step, and we'll see what happens. Will Levis has arm talent. He's got some good charisma. He's got some good aura to him. I'll give him that. But Tennessee's going to be putrid, and I don't think he's going to be able to overcome the chaos of that situation, the lack of talent. Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins are going to be his targets. I hope they can separate for his sake, but Calvin Ridley, DeAndre, that they were never... Well, DeAndre was a great separator, and he was a great contested ball catcher, but he's not in that same position anymore in his career. He's in a different stage of his career now. Zappe's been getting cut. Zappe, I think, just got claimed to the practice squad of the Chiefs. He's okay. He could be a second, third string quarterback, but nothing more than that ever at this point. Tua. I'll put him in B, but I was contemplating putting him in C because if everything is perfect, he's always had an unbelievable supporting cast. Tyreek Hill is probably the best receiver. Jalen Waddle's one of the best twos. Mostert and Achane in the backfield, that's exceptional. The warm weather in South Florida, the kind of dome, he has receivers running wide open, the Mike McDaniel system. Everything is accommodated to him, and credit to him for putting up good numbers, but when things get tough and the weather is not ideal and the opposing defense is great and the opposing team has a quarterback who can put up just as many points, he implodes time and time again. So I think that's who he is. I wouldn't have paid him as much money as Miami paid him, and I think they're going to be limited going forward because nobody thinks Tua can win the game. He looked so poorly. He looked so poor in Arrowhead last year when in those frigid conditions. But I put Herbert in that position. I put Lawrence in that position. Maybe even Jordan Love, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, of course, with big arms, with big bodies, with just a different build, a different kind of quarterback than Tua is. They don't look as bad as he did. So I'm going to hold that against him for sure. He's lucky he's not in the C tier. DeVito, he was fun for the Giants a little bit last year. He had a good stretch. Italian-American guy with some moxie. So, yeah, I respect what he does, but he's nothing more than than what most people think. I think he's properly rated as a low-end, maybe serviceable backup. Caleb's interesting. I think soon enough he's going to be up here, and he's going to be eventually rivaling Mahomes to be up here. But for now, I'm going to put him comfortably here in the B tier, very comfortably. I think that's his floor, and how many rookies coming in game one, week one, is your floor a B tier quarterback? That's unbelievable. I think he's already obviously better than Tua. He might be better than Aaron Rodgers, speaking completely honestly at this point in his career. He's probably already better than Kirk Cousins. And by the end of the year, I think we're going to recognize he's better than Herbo, Lawrence, and Love as well. So he's going to be an exceptional quarterback, top 8 throughout his career, top 7, top 6, very early on. He's got everything you need at this position, and he reminds me a lot of 15 up there at the top of the mountain. So I'm very excited to see this guy. He's generational for a reason. Geno's really good. Geno is he's a I don't want to use the word average, but average feels like it encapsulates his production reasonably well, and he's good for Seattle. He's provided stability in the post Russell Wilson era, and he's always had the arm talent, but for one reason or another he bounced around the league, and he's kind of found a spot here where he can play his football for a few years, and sometimes that's all you need out of a quarterback, a stopgap. Buy yourself some time. Maybe you don't love this quarterback draft. Be competitive. Establish a culture of competitive football, and he's provided that for Seattle. Penix, Michael Penix out of the University of Washington. I don't really trust lefties. Lefty quarterbacks are not my cup of tea. I think the left tackle is the one who's supposed to be protecting the blind side, meaning you're supposed to be a right-handed quarterback in this league, and that's the way things are supposed to be. But Penix has some arm talent. He's a good quarterback. He's got some intangibles as well that people in UW loved and his teammates loved there. So I think eventually it's his team, and I'm not going to blame the Falcons for drafting him after paying Kirk Cousins a boatload. If there's one position you want to have an excess of talent in, it's probably the quarterback position because it's so important. So credit their front office for that. Daniels is also going to go here because I don't think he's in the Caleb Williams category, but he has a lot of potential. He's going to get a lot of reps this year, and as a comp, I think he moves really well, and his arm. I haven't seen too much of him, to be honest, in the preseason. I know he just won the Heisman at LSU, and he has a lot of promise, but I can't really compare him to anyone else in the league right now. I'll just have to see him, and as the season progresses. Dak is B, and I think this is where he belongs, and he's kind of similar to Tua. They've been blessed with really good rosters around them, and that's made them look better than they are, but he's obviously not the guy that can get you the win and the Lombardi, and you're never going to be playing in February with him, so you're going to be a good story, you're going to be a playoff team probably, but nothing more than that. Now CJ burst onto the scene last year, absolutely burst onto the scene. Wow, I don't think anyone expected that out of this kid. Ohio State isn't really known for producing upper echelon quarterback talent, but CJ did a lot of things well last year, and he deserves credit. D'Amico Ryans deserves credit for the team he's building there, and there are a lot of teams picked to be the biggest threat to Kansas City in the AFC this year, so CJ Stroud's a big part of that. He obviously has a loaded team around him. They're taking advantage of this window where CJ Stroud is making rookie contract money, so they brought in Stephon Diggs, and they have Tank Dell and Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz, and it's just a loaded team, loaded roster, and on defense as well with like Will Anderson and stuff like that. So CJ is coming into this year with some expectations, and I hope that doesn't really affect his game because last year he was exceptional. And speaking of A-level quarterbacks, Josh Allen is absolutely an A-level quarterback. He's got as big of an arm as anyone, if not bigger. And he's a touchdown machine. He's an offense onto himself. I think he's kind of in that territory of quarterbacks when they're in their prime, when they're 26, 27, 28, up to like 33 years old. You have a floor. And that floor is you're going to win 8 games. You're going to win 9 games. Obviously, if you have a really talented team around him, like the Bills have had in their past, you're going to win 11, 12 games. He's been good enough to get comparisons to Mahomes. They've had some legendary playoff matchups in their past. He's obviously not Mahomes, and nobody is, so I'm not going to really hold that against him, but he's a great quarterback, and he absolutely belongs in this A tier for sure. I don't think Sam's terrible, but his track record doesn't warrant a really higher rating than this. I think Sam has a real opportunity to produce and put up some good numbers and kind of revive his career in Minnesota. Not every quarterback has the opportunity to throw to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson, so Darnold could be a sleeper, but this is where he belongs for now. Jalen's definitely not an A. He's a B. Jalen's a B because kind of similar to Lamar, and I don't really love making this comparison because I know people are going to say it's unfair, but he's not a gifted thrower. He's not a gifted passer. He doesn't have the touch on the ball. I think his career, unfortunately, peaked in the Super Bowl 2 years ago where he played a nearly flawless football game. The tush-push boosts his stats a bit, which is understandable. He's taken a step back, and some of that can be losing your coordinator and stuff like that, but I hope he rebounds and establishes himself firmly in this tier because he was getting MVP shout-outs a couple years ago, and I don't think that's who he was. I think that was the outlier, and this is who he is at this point. Purdy's also going to go here because of the surplus of talent he has around him, and because he's been struggling in this preseason. He's been throwing picks. He hasn't had Brandon Ayuk because of the holdout. So I know you can't just hold the team's talent against the quarterback. That's not how it works, but I think Kyle Shanahan has had multiple opportunities to win a Super Bowl because of how good the 49ers team is, but in every single one of those, he's entered with the disadvantage at the most important position, that being the quarterback. And not just Purdy, it's been Garoppolo and even Matt Ryan in his past. So Kyle Shanahan's done wonders with what he has at the quarterback position, and Purdy's fine. Purdy's going to get paid, and I think that's going to be the downfall of the 49ers window as well. Deshaun is obviously not what he once was. It's been unfortunate to see what's happened to him, and the Browns had higher expectations, as did I, because of how electrifying he was in Houston. And I don't think he's ever going to be returning to that version of himself, unfortunately. Howell, I know he's not the most popular quarterback because of the picks he threw last year, but he's always been talented. He's always had as big of an arm as anyone in this league, so I think he has a real chance to compete for some snaps and some playing time this year in Seattle, and in an attempt to revive his career and keep himself relevant at the position going forward. Yeah, and that's where I'm going to leave it today because the other 3 quarterbacks, we either haven't seen anything of them, or they're injured, or they're not relevant at this point in their careers, so I'm just going to put them down here. Bo Nix got some expectations this year. He has an opportunity in Denver. J.J. McCarthy suffered a brutal injury, and Joe Flacco's done at this point. So I think this encapsulates the situation of the quarterback position in 2024. One quarterback head and shoulders above everyone else. A good number of really exceptional quarterbacks as well, and then kind of the mid-tier with guys still trying to make a name for themselves and either cling to these last moments of excellence that they've had or that they've experienced, and then a lot of average, a lot of mediocrity at the quarterback position. So I'm going to see how this ranking ages as the 2024 season gets underway and we see more of these guys play.